Hi, Flask here. As per usual, I played some game demos during the recent Steam Next Fest for June 2025. Here's what I thought of the ones that stood out to me. Let's start with a more high-profile one. Dispatch is a narrative superhero management comedy made by some of the folks from Telltale. So we have dialogue choices and a focus on story and characters, but also you're a formerly heroic dispatcher sending formerly criminal superheroes to complete missions around the city. You have to weigh their strengths and weaknesses against the objective, and juggle the team to put the right people on the right jobs. And they have banter with you and with each other. It was, I would say, sufficiently enjoyable. A cel-shaded 3D art style looks great. The animation work is really good, which makes the cutscenes feel like you're watching an animated show. And the whole package is just very slick. I'm not surprised that it's so slick. It seems geared to be a pretty big release. A cast of big-name voice actors and other known personalities. It was enjoyable to play, so I'm expecting good things. MINDWAVE is, as the developer calls it, a cerebral microgame frenzy, which is a description I like. Overtly inspired by WarioWare, the premise is you're entering a tournament for the in-universe game Mindscape, where you duel people in a variety of super quick micro games through your brains, so it incorporates stuff from your personality. I dig this art style a lot. It's like a Jonan Vasquez meets Dan Paladin kind of mania. Sketchy Windows Paint pencil line art like, Pizza Tower, although you can trace that back to the Newgrounds days of Paladin and company. Anyway, really distinct stuff. The music is also excellent, done by a guy who goes by Dorcas64. I stayed on the main menu for a while just to listen to the composition, and the tracks during the microgames change pace to match the action. I never really got into WarioWare or Rhythm Heaven, not for any reason, but I could definitely see checking this out. Gecko Gods is a 3D platformer where you play a little gecko, traversing the ruins of a lost gecko civilization, completing environmental puzzles to open paths and such. The central gimmick is that as a lizard, you can crawl across any surface to get around. That, and there doesn't seem to be any fall damage. What that makes for is a glorious feeling exploration of the environment. I'm a 3D platformer connoisseur, so let me tell you, I enjoyed the feel of this game a whole lot. It just felt very natural to move that way, and the objectives incorporate your freedom well. The visual style is that fined edges sort of crisp. Everything has a black outline rendering. Still not sure what that's called exactly. Anyway, I'm excited for this one. Metal Eden is a first-person shooter, fast-paced like modern Doom, with some similar mechanics like incorporating melee and different enemy types with specific weaknesses. And one of the main tricks I saw in the demo was remotely ripping the core out of your robotic opponents, which is a kill move on a cooldown, and then you can huck the core at other enemies, or consume it to get a temporary boost to your melee. It's set in some kind of high-tech city. You're an artificial being called a hyper unit, sent into cybernetic warfare missions. Looks really cool, and quite high fidelity, cool cutscenes too. The gameplay was fun from what I played. Solid shooting action. The main criticism of this demo that you'll see, and it's bringing the reviews way down, is the technical performance. It didn't run well for me, but it wasn't nearly unplayable. Still, even for me, it wouldn't be considered smooth. Hopefully that's something the devs can iron out before release, because this game could be sick. It's being made by Raycon, the Polish team behind Ruiner. Except about a year ago, they cut most of their staff, so who knows how they're doing now. I mean, Ruiner was all the way back in 2017. But I don't know, the presentation of this game speaks to still having legs. Whisper Mountain Outbreak is an isometric 2D pixel sprite on 3D environment survival horror game. It has solo and co-op play. You can train and upgrade at your base, and then you set out on a mission to an infected location and complete objectives there. There's both melee and guns, and throwables like Molotovs. It reminds me of Project Zomboid somewhat, or like old Flash games where you have to fight back the zombie horde, but the gameplay is satisfying. Apparently the story is that it's 1998, and a curse has trapped people on a mountain. There does seem to be supernatural stuff involved, like how your CO summons or resurrects you in a ritual circle. I guess we'll find out the nature of this whole crisis. But yeah, I'm definitely going to coerce some friends into trying out the co-op on release. You know, it might scratch our Resident Evil Outbreak itch, since dumb old Capcom is only making epic RE9s instead of granting our very reasonable 25-year wish for Outbreak File Number 3. Toree Saturn is a 3D platform speedy runner type game. To be honest, I don't even know why I'm playing a demo of this, considering I've liked everything else I've played from this developer, including this game's predecessors in the Toree series. This particular series is more focused on speed and flow to get the fastest time through the level, which it grades you on at the end. That's not as much my thing as the collectathon bent of their other games, like McBat 64 and Super Kiwi 64, but these are still fun to me. There's something to be said for going as fast as possible through glitzy neon vaporwave dance pop worlds as a duck with sunglasses. The Drifter is a point-and-click adventure pulp thriller. Really good-looking pixel art animation. It's from the same developers as Crawl, so not surprising. Fully voice-acted, very Australian. You play as a drifter coming home for his mother's funeral, but he gets immediately caught up in some kind of abduction and murder conspiracy involving the homeless population. And the central conceit seems to be that when he dies, he resets to just before he died. What that's a consequence of, no idea in the demo. It's too high energy to really be called a noir, but the protagonist does narrate what he's going through like he's in one. So think noir presentation for a thriller story. It felt very smooth to play, and the voice acting and everything is really solid. I think this is going to be a good one. Mio, Memories in Orbit, is a 2.5D Metroidvania action platformer. You're a little android in a big metal world. The description calls it an ark. It's populated by other mechanical beings, both friend and foe. The whole thing has kind of a techno art deco slant, including the UI. And although these early areas seem to be a little drab, the Steam page has screenshots of later areas that look more vibrant and varied. The gameplay is what you'd expect. Double jump, attack strings. It has a version of Hollow Knight's charm system, here called mods, where you have to manage which ones are installed at any given time, because you have a limited pool of points to allocate. There are probably other games with that system. Hollow Knight is just my touchstone for it. The two things I was missing most in the demo were the ability to wall jump and a map, but I wouldn't be surprised if those are upgrades you get. When I died, at least in the demo, my nacre droplets were being lost to a pond above my respawn point, rather than being something I could go recollect. And an NPC up there claimed it would be helpful once filled, so that may be a recurring element as well. You definitely will be encountering NPCs to help along the way. Dice Gambit is a turn-based tactical RPG with some randomization elements. You play as an Inquisitor, a sort of knight, tasked with destroying the chromatic monsters infesting the city. Presentation is very stylized. Visuals, music, writing, all going for a color-soaked, cheeky urban fantasy tone. I noticed the world seems to be fairly modern. There are cars on the street, and yet the combat is swordplay. The intro cutscene does allude to rapid innovation. Speaking of combat, it's turn-based. Both your party and enemies have limited movement each turn, based on a honeycomb of floor spots. You know the drill. But each turn you roll dice, which can come up as movement, defense, attack, etc. Then you spend those as you will, but you can also re-roll a limited amount to get different actions. I'm sure it gets more complex as you gain more skills, options, and more party members. It's pretty fun from what I played. Between ventures, you have a home base where you can upgrade, train, heal, maybe talk to characters. Then you start an expedition, which takes the form of connected points on a map, board game style. Those points can be combat encounters, treasure, healing, different stuff. and you have a limited amount of party energy, which, when depleted, lowers your morale. On my first run, I made the mistake of trying to hit every point on the map, which left me too weak for the final boss encounter. That did let me see a neat feature, which is that when your created protagonist dies, they're replaced by a newly generated heir. So that reminds me of like Rogue Legacy, but I don't know if different heirs will possess different attributes, or if it's largely cosmetic. Outrider Mako is a top-down exploration action platformer delivery game, where you play as Mako, a girl who's ended up in an afterlife she doesn't belong in. So she has to collect divine seal stamps for her notebook to eventually get back home. The demo started in Japanese, which was funny. I swapped to English, but maybe it's like when you go to a restaurant of a specific nationality's cuisine. It's a good sign when people of that nationality are eating there, you know? Authentic. It would be really funny if Azumoto games aren't even Japanese. Anyway, you have to make deliveries to beings in this world. There is combat, and it's a little more intricate than I was expecting. You can jump, and you can hop on top of enemies and objects, and then do more powerful attacks off of them. You also incorporate goop. You can goop your foes. And then you're also collecting materials, sometimes for deliveries. Those materials can also be made into other stuff. There seem to be a bunch of other aspects of the game that I didn't engage with in my demo time, but I'll say, usually, these types of games don't catch my eye too much. This one, I think, has something to it that could really stand out, both mechanically and visually. I think especially its design and wealth of animation put it on the right foot. Everdeep Aurora is a 2D... I'm not sure it's even a Metroidvania, or maybe it's an adventure platformer game. I'm realizing now that I didn't engage in any combat in the demo, so there might not be any. You play as a little cat with a drill. The demo content was limited, but in that at least, you platform around, go through many doors into many rooms, play a bit of hide and seek, collect some items, knock some boxes, which have physics by the way. The Steam description says that an apocalyptic meteor shower has forced people underground, and you'll have to dig down through a tile-based underground. The demo didn't have me engaging in that, unless I'm just dumb and missed it, but it does sound cool. I think the game is intentionally going for an old-school feeling in both its visuals and its menuing, maybe like the Game Boy Color era. It's of course much more lush visually, it looks pretty. I'm looking forward to seeing what the meat of the experience will be. I could get behind it even if it's just some, chill exploration for the most part. ADRIFT is a top-down driving exploration game. You're a truck in a kind of desert, transporting an energy core that rises in temperature as you carry it. So you need to find cooling stations to reset its meter, and you can temporarily leave the core at those stations to explore around and get the lay of the land. There are also mapping towers that let you see points of interest in the area, and you'll be going through certain landmarks like broken bridges you need to fix, ferries, checkpoints. I like the game experience here, and it's mostly relaxing even with the ticking clock when you're core laden. The handling of the vehicle is not totally arcadey, not totally simulation. It's heavy, but like the title indicates, you'll be drifting. I do have a couple of qualms. The visual style is not very appealing to me. I think it's going for a tilt-shift effect, maybe to give the impression of a sandbox world with a model truck, but to me it just looked rather blurry and blandly textured. The other thing is more fundamental, and it's something I'm not sure I'd really want to be different. Part of the joy of the game is in exploring, and specifically leaving the core behind to scout routes. Then you might find a scanning tower which gives you map info, or you might have to find supplies to repair a bridge or something. Obviously you wouldn't have wanted to bring the core along on those time-consuming diversions, and the game helpfully lets you teleport back to the last used cooling station. But when you leave the core at a station, drive for a minute or two, only to end up at point B on a linear road that you need the core to pass through, it's kind of a waste of time to teleport back and just do that same drive again. This wasn't a big issue in the demo, but I'm just hoping that it never feels like your time is being wasted in the full release. As chill as the driving is, I don't want to ever feel like my scouting is being punished, I think with map design, you could take strides to avoid that, so Fingers crossed. DAVY X Jones. DAVY times Jones? DAVY cross Jones, perhaps? I would go with either X, like X marks the spot on a map, or cross, like Crossbones, one of those two. Anyway, it's a first-person action-adventure game. You play as Davy Jones, or more specifically, Davy Jones's body in alliance with Davy Jones's floating skull, who talks to you. You're in the pirate underworld, and you're on a quest for revenge against Blackbeard and your own traitorous crew. So you have a pistol and a sword, and it's sort of like a first-person shooter. You also get a grappling hook to grapple to points or to enemies, and you can send Davy's skull to bite stuff as part of combos or to regain health. Feels pretty good so far, and it'll probably get more complex and more hairy as you go. The demo is emphatic that it's a work in progress, but the big draw already is the fidelity of the detailed environments. Really cool areas that are already nice to look at and go through. I think it was smart to make those really shine, even if other aspects are currently placeholder. But they also already have more good stuff, like voice acting, music, an animated cutscene. It's coming along for sure. As an aside, with the floating skull companion, it kind of reminds me of Shadows of the Damned. Even the color palette a little bit too.
You ever miss the old days, Jones?
Altheia, the Wrath of Aferi, which is a name I can just tell I'm never going to remember, is a third-person action-adventure with environmental puzzles, like in the vein of classic 3D Legend of Zeldas. You play as a guardian, exploring temple ruins with a shadow fox companion, a dingo, a coyote. He's apparently a monk, and briefly he turns into an elf man when he's pulling a lever, so that may be his real form. But while he's shadowy, he can transform in different ways to aid you in combat or puzzles, like becoming your arrows, or a bomb, or doing special attacks on enemies. And the combat is Zelda-like in that you can lock on. It's mostly swordplay with the bow entering in, and you can perform special attacks by building meter. It feels like a very ambitious game, especially because I think the dev team is two brothers. There's a lot of potential here, and it already has a lot of good art assets, some voice acting, some neat set pieces and puzzles, just in the demo here. A lot of the design feels right. It's still rough around the edges. The combat felt kinda awkward, the sound effects weren't all there. The controls and button promptings could use more refinement. Some other little details, but in my experience, everything that was wrong was very fixable. And I'd like to see this game make it as a polished product. One thing though, please don't make us navigate the menus using a cursor on controller. It's a controller game, so let's change that, shall we? Starlight Re Volver is a 1 to 4 player co-op action roguelike. Top-down perspective. It also claims to be an MMO, which I guess I did see many other players milling about in the lobby. So you and a party dive into a string of levels where you have to defeat all enemies to clear them. The combat is sort of MMO-ish, sort of MOBA-ish. You get an upgrade or a new attack at the end of each level, then vote on the next, and you see how far you can get, I guess. This demo was the most not my thing of any game in this video. No, it's not the garish anime visuals. I can handle those. The gameplay just wasn't that interesting to me. No shade to anyone. You know, enjoy what you enjoy. But it feels like a shallow game that a lot of people could get addicted to because the number goes up all the time. Apparently there are or will be other activities like minigames, fishing, crafting. So it's possible that it'll harken back to the community garnering MMOs of yore, with a core loop that appeals to a certain strain of player. It does sort of remind me of an online game I would have played for a few days 15 years ago. Speaking of games that feel like I could have played them 15 years ago, White Room Protocol is a first-person psychological horror, trauma reliving game where you're being subjected to some kind of trial based on your memories. Pretty bog-standard horror game. I've personally tried dozens of these. It doesn't have bad atmosphere, though. I find that this type of horror game can easily screw up the delicate sense of foreboding generated by what you don't see, what you think you hear. This demo pulled it off okay, especially if you grade on a scale, but it's more in the spooky house jump scare camp than the dreadful, creepy suggestion camp. Ball X Pit Our second title with this format in this video is a brick-breaking game that was the focus of a recent Volver digital presentation. It's actually a breakout-style game mixed with a bullet heaven roguelike, and it's pretty ingenious. This is the demo I think I most wanted to just keep playing. You can move around the field, shooting out bouncing balls and regular damaging shots at the waves of enemies who periodically fire arrows at you as they advance down the field. If any enemy rows reach the bottom, they'll attack you for big damage. So you're trying to destroy them, and you get levels up by picking up the gems from kills. Level ups let you get new balls with new effects, or upgrade your existing balls. Now and then the enemies will drop a special item that lets you randomly upgrade multiple balls, or combine balls, or evolve balls. Very much a bullet heaven style system. So it can get pretty deep in terms of strategy. Like on one of my runs, I combined a vampire ball that restored my health from enemies with a vertical laser ball that damaged all enemies in a column. So now that ball is sapping health to me from whole columns of enemies. And more generally, like in any brick breaker, it's often cool to get your ball behind enemy lines to bounce like crazy, do a lot of damage. But then that leaves you with less attack power to clear the front rows that are more pressingly dangerous. There are things to learn and things to try. Anyway, each run has several bosses, and then it'll culminate in a big boss that turns it into more of a bullet hell, where you have a lot more projectiles to avoid. It's pretty fun. Oh, and between each run, you go back to home base, where you're building out plots of resources that you can harvest once per day, using your characters as the ball to bounce around and collect. This is also where you can build the buildings that you find as blueprints during runs, and these unlock new characters with their own skills. And it seems like there will be more progression in terms of upgrades for the lift that takes you into the pit and back. I've spoken a lot on this one, but I'm glad to end the video strong with a great idea well executed. I'll definitely be playing this when it releases. If you like this sort of video, not only is there a second part coming soon, but I'm actually uploading similar videos to my new personal channel, where I give my impressions of many non-NextFest game demos that I've played in the last little while. So check that channel out for those, and for more happy content to come there. I know they say don't let the kidnapper take you to a second location, but first of all, I'm unarmed, as you can see, and secondly, you'd be coming willingly. It's like not a big deal. Thanks for watching.